Hello YouTube, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another wrap-up video for the month of July. So this one is going to be mostly front-heavy. There's going to be a lot more things I have to say about movies and television than there are about manga, because, well, I didn't really read that much manga slash light novels this month. I mean, I did probably a good amount, an amount that is pretty standard for me, but it wasn't quite as much as I had originally envisioned. Even though I did manage to finish up my TBR video. So, or sorry, my TBR list, which I made a video on, right? So let's get started. Let's talk about all of the stuff that I've been watching, and feel free to, skip to the part that you like if you're not interested in listening to me talk about anime and movies, right? So, yeah, let's get started with what I was doing while I was in Mexico. So, I watched the last 4/5 episodes of Drifting Dragons. I finished the anime. I thought it was okay. Like, it's good because it follows the storyline pretty well. The music actually adds a lot of stuff to the enjoyment of the series, but because I had already experienced this and I think that the manga is superior to the anime, it wasn't as great as I was envisioning it to be, but I kind of already knew this. I just wanted to finish the series because I had not been able to do so before. It's been like about a year since I started watching it, and it was only until now that I finished watching it. So that's good. I'm happy that I finished watching it. I'm not going to make a review on it or anything like that because I didn't really feel like there was too much to say about that I hadn't already said in my mid-month check-in and that I'm already mentioning here now. So yeah, Drifting Dragons is a good series. It has a good storyline. Definitely recommend you check out the manga first and then check out the anime, because the anime is going to ruin a lot of the plot for you without actually giving you too much, because it's that really weird, not very perfected yet kind of CGI animation that feels really slow sometimes. It works for the dragon characters quite well, actually, but it doesn't work for humans yet. And that's probably because we're very used to knowing how humans move, and animation, like in the traditional sense, manages to capture that slightly better than the CGI, where it just looks really slow, right? So, yeah, Drifting Dragons season 1 was okay. And I watched Bastard season 1, or episodes 1 through 13, because it's technically the whole season is 24 episodes, but they split it in 2 because Netflix is wild. And I really enjoyed it. I made a review for it already, so you guys already know my thoughts on the series. But it's really, really fun. It's kind of old school. It's very ecchi. It's a lot of very ridiculous, kind of probably not good by today's standards kind of jokes that were probably very nice and very funny in the time period that it was made, over 20 years ago. But it still manages to have a very good element of camp to it that I really enjoy. The aesthetic of the show is great. I love heavy metal dark fantasy being a tagline of the story because it definitely fits, and it's just like very well designed and thought out, and I really enjoy it. The soundtrack to it was awesome. I really like, guitar riffs with like Celtic-ish kind of sounding music, or like bard, tavern type music, and I think it's really, really fun. It's one of the reasons why I actually really love Fairy Tail as well, because I watched the anime first, and the anime had a lot of this type of music that just made me really excited. And so Bastard having stuff like that is also really exciting. I also just really enjoyed the old school kind of nostalgic kind of character designs. Even though I'm not from that time period, a lot of the manga and anime that I watched when I was a child is more or less in that kind of style, right? So it's very fun, very, very enjoyable. So yeah, while I was in Mexico, I also watched Thor: Love and Thunder, and I really, really enjoyed it, actually. It's very funny. I had a lot of fun with the goat, screaming jokes. I don't know why. I just thought it was hilarious that there's these crazy goats. And of course, it's awesome because it's also mythologically accurate. Thor did have 2 goats that he would have with him that it would take him places. And I'm pretty sure that they would be alive during the day. He would eat them for dinner, and then in the morning they would magically wake up again alive and ready to pull his chariot. So I think that's really funny. It also kind of fits with the fact that Thor is more or less a farming god. So that's really, really cool. And the movie was great. It was a little too much on the joking side of things, but it also managed to, at least for me, hit all of the emotional plot points of the story. I think that Gore was, on like face value, a good villain, but if you look at it a little bit more deeply, you kind of notice that he was kind of in the right. Most of the gods that he ended up killing were the ones that were actually trying to help their people, and in doing so, he was actually saving the gods that he wanted to kill. And so it kind of doesn't make sense, but also kind of fits within the fact that, you know, the MCU doesn't really care too much about making great villains. It is mostly about the superheroes, right? And of course, that is just kind of up in the air, whether you like it or not. It's very much dependent on each person individually. But for me, the movie worked. I really enjoyed seeing Natalie Portman acting in a, you know, spec fiction kind of movie again. It was great. I really enjoyed her as a actress. It was nice to see her again in the television, like in a movie that is also kind of like a fandom thing for me, right? So that was really good. I really wish she would have showed up in something for Star Wars, but I'm pretty sure that she doesn't really want to work in anything in Star Wars anymore. So that's totally fair, right? Then I also watched Jurassic World Dominion, and again, I really enjoyed this one. Contrary to most people's opinions, I found that the Locust plot point actually made a lot of sense. However, this is also because I was exposed to the fact that this plot point existed there for the vast majority of the time that the movie was available before I ended up watching it, because I'm pretty sure I watched it in its last showing at the movie theater that I went to. And so knowing that the Locust plot point existed, but not knowing the context of it, made it easier to swallow. And so it actually made it more, you know, like it didn't taint my enjoyment of the series at all. I thought that this plot point was good. The fact that the movie happened the way it did was also good. I mean, the, you know, girl being a clone didn't really matter, even though it was supposed to be a big important thing from the previous movie. But I think that they managed to do a good enough job at wrapping everything up, of making everything kind of work. They leave it open for a new one if they really want to, but more or less kind of leave it closed-ended, right? So that it's basically the end of the Jurassic World / Park series. You know, 20 years from down the road, they might redo it again. But for now, I think that it is done. And I think that it was a good movie to end it. There was a lot of fun, you know, dinosaur situations happening, and I really don't have any issues with it. I thought all the characters were good. I really enjoy Chris Pratt as Owen, right? I think that's his name. He's basically just Han Solo, but he's cool. And I quite like that. And Bryce Dallas Howard is great as always. So yeah, I really had no problems with Jurassic World Dominion. I really enjoyed it at the end of the day. Then we came back to the US and we watched The Batman with like me and my parents and my sister. My parents and my mom and my sister had not watched it before, so I had, and I recommended it, and my dad really enjoyed it, which I kind of understood was going to be the case. My dad does enjoy these kind of slower, kind of, you know, crime detective type movies. My sister and my mom did not like it. I expected this to be the case, and it's totally understandable and fair if they don't like it. That's just how it is. But I really enjoyed it again on the second time. I do feel that it was still a little bit slow. There were some moments where the story could have really been tightened up and shortened, and it would have made the watching experience a lot more enjoyable, because there was moments where I was like, okay, this is dragging a lot. What the heck? Move on. But overall, it's still a great movie. I really, really enjoyed it. Selena Kyle and Bruce Banner are great characters in this movie, and I really enjoy the way they interact with each other. It's really, really good. Then we watched The Atom Project. I had heard about this movie for a while. I had not really paid much attention to it, but, you know, we were going to watch Uncharted, and then we realized that it wasn't on Netflix yet, so we watched The Atom Project instead. And it was a great movie. I really, really enjoyed it. Ryan Reynolds is a very fun character. I mean, he just plays Ryan Reynolds in every one of his movies, except maybe Deadpool, but even then, Deadpool is basically just Ryan Reynolds. So it's like he plays that same character. Mark Ruffalo shows up and does some stuff in the story as well, which I thought was really, really good. And then we have this young kid that's supposed to be playing Percy Jackson eventually, who also did a really great job with the way that he was supposed to be a young Ryan Reynolds. And I think that worked really, really well. They did a great job casting these characters. The plotline of the story was also pretty good. It's basically I have to go back in time to save myself kind of plotline. Basically, I guess that's kind of one of the plot points for a Terminator movie, right? I'm not exactly sure, but it's kind of that same idea. I think Zoe Saldana shows up as well at one point, and that was also really fun. I really enjoyed everything that happened in the movie. It was a really great romp. It was a really fun popcorn movie. It had a lot of funny jokes as well. Overall, just a really enjoyable experience to watch The Atom Project. Then we watched Uncharted. We rented this from a Redbox. And Uncharted continues to be a very fun, ridiculous, kind of like wants to be Indiana Jones, but is mostly Fast and Furious with a little bit of National Treasure mixed in. It also has, you know, this really big set piece at the end of the story, which is basically a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And I really like that. I thought that was really, really great, actually. That's my favorite part of the movie. I really enjoyed the kind of emotional ride that Tom Holland takes his character in. I'm not a fan of the video games. I've never played them before. So that's also why I have a lot of enjoyment for the Uncharted movie, even though the vast majority of people that played the video game and saw the movie didn't really like it. And I definitely understand that. You know, if you're a fan of something and then they butcher it in the adaptation, you're not going to like it. But for me, I think that Uncharted was a good enough, enjoyable popcorn movie, and I think that it having broad appeal like that is probably going to lead to it having more movies, and I really hope that that is the case, because it'd be really fun to see the next installment in Tim Drake and Sully's, you know, adventures, right? So I would really like that a lot. Then I watched the Obi-Wan Kai Patterson cut. I wanted to make a video on it, and it really didn't do much for me. Like, there was moments where he played music that was from the original trilogy and from the prequels that managed to tie in the story a little bit better. But the fact that they weren't actually scored for the series makes it so they're noticeably not supposed to be there, and that kind of takes you out of the experience. Also, because he only had the show's worth of content to work with, whenever he removed something, you know, sometimes it didn't necessarily work into the next scene. There's some moments where he added some things that I think worked well. The most important one being having a Liam Neeson voiceover when Obi-Wan was trapped under all the rubble that Darth Vader threw on him. That worked really, really well. If he could have taken out the scenes of young Luke and Leia, it would have been better for me, because, you know, it's supposed to be the fact that, you know, the Force works better when you're using it to defend someone, but there's no reason why Obi-Wan would think that he needs to defend, you know, those kids that he doesn't really care about, honestly. Like, he cares about them because they're Anakin's children, but he doesn't have relationships with them. So there's no point in them being the reason that he gets strong in the Force, right? But, so I think that adding the Liam Neeson voiceover really helped it, but it's still not great, right? And overall, I think that the cut also kind of suffers from the fact that he removes parts, but you already know that those parts are there, and you realize that, you know, now they add context to the story, and so it kind of sucks, because now you want the original, even though you don't like the original, or at least I didn't like the original that much. And so there's just a lot of problems that come with the editing that it just didn't really live up to the hype. However, I can definitely see this being used as a proof of concept, like, hey, this should have been a movie, and I definitely agree. It could have probably been better as a movie, but honestly, a show is a better format in my opinion. Shows are just generally more enjoyable because there's more content. The problem is that the content they gave us in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show was not good. Most of the Reva stuff was unnecessary. If she was in her own show, it would have been much better. If, like, we followed Reva in the Star Wars Inquisitor show, and we followed all of her journey, and then it kind of crossed over with Obi-Wan Kenobi for like an episode, that would have been great. But that's not really the story we got. We got this introduction of a new character through the use of the old characters, and then she kind of took over the story, and I really don't like that, because I don't care about Reva. I want to see the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and that's why I watched the show. And the show did not actually give me that, right? Instead, it gave me Reva, and Reva being angry at Anakin, and then Obi-Wan becoming friends with Leia, even though it doesn't necessarily line up with the originals, even though it doesn't necessarily have to, because they can still, you know, have 10 more years to work it into it, you know, functioning well. But I don't know, the show was generally disappointing, and the Kai Patterson cut did not really make it better. It didn't make it worse, but it wasn't significantly enhanced by this edit, right? So yeah, then we watched this Spanish TV show called Entre Vías, or in the English edition, I think it's called On the Wrong Side of the Tracks, which is really, really good. It's by this, it has this very big Spanish actor that he's in a lot of series. I think one of them is Unauthorized Living. It's the other show that he's really big in. And it was a really good show. It basically deals with this very kind of grouchy scumbag kind of old guy, and he has a really shitty family, and because of problems that happened to him as a younger man, and his granddaughter, who's adopted, ends up coming in contact with him and kind of having to live with him due to some circumstances. It turns out that there's a lot of problems with drugs and just kind of interacting with these drug dealers in his, town. And then, a lot of stuff happens, and he's dealing with that. He's dealing with his granddaughter, who's also involved in that kind of problem. And then he's dealing with his granddaughter's boyfriend, who is from Colombia. And so, Spaniards kind of have a different view on Latin Americans than, you might expect. And so that kind of drives a lot of conflict. And it's a really, really good show. I really recommend it. You guys should definitely watch it. It's really, really good. It has a lot of kind of interpersonal tension, but also a lot of like anti-drug kind of moments there with the characters like getting into direct physical conflict, and I thought it was really, really good. There's also this crooked cop character who's also a really great actor. So the show was really, really good. Then I watched the Gray Man movie with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and Ana de Armas, which is actually the best part. I think she's the best character in that movie, but also really like her as an actress and she's a really beautiful woman. So the movie was good, actually. I really enjoyed it. There were some little bits of it being funny, but the story basically felt like a Jason Bourne or a Mission Impossible type movie, with like the added fact that the set pieces were hugely ridiculous and like obsessively like a lot. Like there was this one part where they just kind of destroy Prague, and it was cool. It really worked, but like it was also just too much spectacle. And I think the movie could have been shortened just a little bit and it would have been a lot better. But generally, the movie was really, really enjoyable. I really liked the action sequences. I liked the emotional kind of connection between the Gray Man's S6 or Sierra 6 and his handler, which was basically his father figure, and his father's figure's niece, who basically turns out to have this relationship equivalent to a younger sister with the main character, Ryan Gosling. And so I really like that. I like the way that Ana de Armas gets included into their group. And I also really just like Chris Evans being a bad guy. I think he did a great job in Knives Out, and he does kind of the same kind of idea here, and it works really, really well. He's kind of this psychopathic, private contractor kind of mercenary guy, and it works really, really well. It was a great movie. I really, really enjoyed it. It had a lot of great set pieces and action moments, and it had a pretty good through line of the plot line, so I really liked that overall. Then I managed to convince my parents to watch Vinland Saga with me because it was recently added to Netflix, and it finally had English dubbing and Spanish dubbing, which was actually much more important because I got them to watch it by making sure that it was in Spanish. And my dad really enjoyed it. I think my mom kind of enjoyed it. Generally, she does like Viking shows, and also the fact that it was in Spanish made it a lot easier for her because she didn't have to read subtitles like when we watched Vikings, the History Channel series. Even though she really enjoyed that one, it was a lot more taxing because she had to read a lot more. And it's just kind of annoying when you're trying to follow the action that is being presented while reading the subtitles. So I kind of understand where she's coming from. But Vinland Saga is great. I had not realized that they changed the order of the events to make it more linear, and I think that was a great choice. I really like that. There's also some scenes that they added to add more context to Thor's and Torkill's relationship, which I like a lot as well. And just the way it was made was really, really great. Like, I had not expected it to be that well animated, and I totally understand why so many people were really into the TV show. However, I mean, I really like the series. I've read up to volume 8 of the American edition, the 2-in-1s. So I definitely understand why people like it. I just hadn't expected the anime to be that good, because usually anime are not as good as the manga, in my opinion. But it was great. I really liked it. My dad liked it a lot. My mom kind of liked it. I'm pretty sure she liked it. I'm not too sure because, I didn't really ask her, but I also didn't know if she was paying attention the whole time because my mom usually is on her phone. And so that was kind of interesting, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was really good. And it's a great Viking show. It's just a good show in general, but for a Viking show, it's also really, really good. It kind of has a lot more focused, lasered in kind of plot line compared to a lot of other Viking shows like The Last Kingdom or Vikings Valhalla. Those are a lot more widespread, kind of epic feeling. And I think that Vinland Saga is a lot more narrow in its focus, but I think that it's still good because it has a very clear through line in terms of its plot line, so you don't get lost, and that actually makes it a lot more enjoyable than, having to remember what happened in season 2 before you get into season 4, So I think that's good. And today is the 30th, so I still have one more day of TV watching and reading, but the plan is to also watch the Jungle Cruise, and I have started watching the Transformers series on Netflix, like the animated one. I think it's called Siege. That's like the first part. There's like a Transformers trilogy on Netflix, so I started watching that. So if I have anything important to say, I'll probably leave it down in the comments, in the pinned comment. So, if you guys are more interested in that, do check that out. But that's basically it for all of what I've been watching this month. That's kind of my wrap up in terms of film. And yeah, let me set up a little bit, and then we'll get back to the reading section of the wrap up. So I'm going to switch the order of things. Instead of doing the what I haven't read yet section at the end, I'm going to do it before the what I have read. So I just want to mention that because I am kind of changing the format a little bit so I can kind of, maybe it's just for this video, but the point is that I want to say that I'm dropping Saga of Tanya the Evil officially because I don't know. I've been trying to read this for like weeks, and every time I start reading, I lose interest immediately. I think it's just so dense that it's like a really interesting story, but getting into the mood of it is not great, and I don't really want to have to feel that every time I read one of these novels, so I'm just going to drop it, and I think that I'm getting rid of this series, because even though I liked it, I thought it was a really good kind of engaging kind of story once you get into it. Getting into it is such a task that it's just not enjoyable. It's not worth it. So instead of just having these 2 volumes and never reading the second one and then just having them in my collection taking up room, I'm just going to get rid of them. So these will be on my Q3 unhaul video for sure. That's it for that one. I changed out my alternative titles. So instead of reading King's Dragon and Gleipnir, I changed them out for titles that I'll mention later. So I didn't read these either. And then the last thing is that I did not read Red Rising or Shadow Rising at all this month. Now, I could have, and I probably will in the next day, because I still have time to read them for the end of the month. But the reality is that I'm not going to finish reading them, and so there's no point in me kind of having them part of my read schedule, right? So I'll probably just keep these on my TBR indefinitely and just kind of have them around with me and see if I finally finish reading them. But if I don't, it's not a big deal. I'm just kind of upset that I can't force myself to read these, because then that drains the enjoyment out of the activity, right? So that's just kind of how it is. But it's fine. Now, other than that, I did actually manage to finish my TBR very quickly. Actually, I finished it around day 24, 25. And then I've been reading alternative titles that I wanted to finish reading for whatever reason, right? For a different reason, which is actually that I didn't want to take these back with me to my university, to my dorm room. Or it's not my dorm, it's actually my apartment. So I didn't want to take them back to my apartment. And so I just decided to read them now, get reviews for them done, and then leave them here in my house before I go back for university, right? So, yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to go chronological, even though that's going to mix light novels, manga, and comics all together. And I think that that's for the best, because there's really only one comic, so it's not a big deal. There's no reason for me to have a separate what I've been reading comic section like I usually do in all my other videos. So let's get started. Let's start with the first thing that I read before we went to Mexico. I read volume 3 of My Dress Up Darling. Now, I really enjoy this story. I think it's great. I really, really, really like what happens in this volume, if I remember correctly, is when my boy and the younger, or the, well, she's not actually younger, she just looks younger, the other cosplay girl becomes friends with my main man Gojo. I think her name is Juju, actually. Juju, I don't know, something like that. And he does a cosplay for her. Then he helps her sister out as well. And then they set up for their situation here. And Marine does some fun stuff with Gojo as well, which is really, really great. I just really like this story a lot. I don't know. There's something about the way that Gojo and Marine interact that just makes me so happy. There is one problem with this manga, actually, is that there's some moments where it was cut incorrectly because, as you guys can see right there, maybe you can't, it's glued incorrectly, and that kind of sucks. But I don't necessarily know that it matters all that much because the flaws of it are on the inside, and so it's a little bit easier to not feel like upset about it because I don't see it every time I look at my shelf, right? So unless it gets really bad when I reread this, I'm probably going to keep this edition this version and not necessarily look for a new one unless I can get a good deal on it. So that's it for the first manga that I read this month. Then, now that I'm in Mexico, now that I was in Mexico, the first thing that I read was Grass Ross, which is a great volume. This one is kind of the prologue of the story. Basically sets up that this guy is a great hunter and he's about to have a child. His child is actually being born on the blood moon. Where's the blood moon? There was an image here. I can't remember where. But anyway, this child is born under a red moon, a blood moon. And so he is destined to bring destruction to the village. But his father, Dada, does not want to kill his child in order to save the village. So what he does instead is goes and fights this giant woolly mammoth in order to appease the gods. He kills this thing and he brings it back to the village. However, he suffers so many extensive injuries that he is basically no longer able to be a hunter, and so loses all the status in his village. And so that causes his son Aku to be kind of ostracized from society. And then we see Aku as a young boy kind of deal with this as he kind of goes through a few days of his life. And then eventually the Grash shows up, and the Grash is this giant woolly mammoth that tears the village to the ground, right? And then they vow Grass Ross, which is death to the Grash or suffering to the Grash, something like that. And so that's where the volume ends, and it's a great story. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm really excited to read more of it. I know that it gets kind of a little bit more ecchi as the story goes on, and then it finishes quickly in 5 volumes. But so far, I'm really liking everything that Muneyuki Kaneshiro does. He's the same guy that did Yagan. He's the same guy that did Blue Lock. And I did read a little bit of Blue Lock here recently, this morning actually, just like half of the first chapter. And I so far really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting kind of take on a soccer manga. So that's really cool. But yeah, Grass Ross was a great read. I really, really enjoyed it. And hopefully I can buy the rest of the series here soon. Then I read Campfire Cooking Volume 1. This is the light novel edition. I don't have a physical edition, so I can't show you. There are no physical editions, if I remember correctly. And this one is basically cooking with wild game, but with a more traditional, like, slime isekai type system, right? So this guy, I can't remember if he dies or he is picked to be reincarnated. Or actually, I think he gets summoned as a hero, but he turns out to not be a hero. He is summoned by accident. So he gets all the perks without all of the responsibility. And what his perk is specifically is his ability to use a Amazon-like web market through like dimensions, basically. And so he can bring over food from this Amazon grocery store into his world, and he uses it to cook really good food, right? And he actually gains the allegiance of quite a few people doing this, and so it's kind of interesting and fun, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great read. It was really relaxing. I love cooking manga and cooking light novels a lot. Cooking with Wild Game is one of my favorite light novels for sure, and Campfire Cooking is definitely up there as well. It kind of manages to have that with a lot more of the fantasy element that I like from more gamelet style isekai, so I like that a lot. I thought it was really great. So yeah, then Mobile Suit Gundam 1 and 2, and man, these covers are great. I just love them so much. But yeah, so Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt is an interesting series. When I first read the first one, I liked the volume, I liked the storyline, but I thought the storyline was confusing. Now I kind of understand it. There's this one moon base place that was destroyed, and they vowed revenge against Zeon, and so now they're functioning as a military in order to try to take them down. However, Zeon is proving to be too good at their job against them, and so they're struggling. Eventually, they get a mobile suit, and they use this mobile suit to try to attack the Zeon base in this other place. However, the Zeon side of things is actually conducting research in order to increase the capability of their pilots to engage with their mech suits, and the way that they're doing this is by removing parts of their bodies and replacing it with mechanical arms and legs. And so it's a really interesting, kind of very messed up kind of situation here, but it actually leads to a really interesting set of characters and situations that I really like so far. That's kind of what happens by the end of Volume 2, and it's really working really well for me. I really liked it. I can't wait to pick up Volume 3, but if it took me like 7 months to get Volume 2, it's probably going to take me another 7 months to get Volume 3. So, I don't know, but Mobile Suit Gundam was really fun, really great. So, quite liked it. And man, the mechanical design on these characters is just so good. So, yeah, then continuing on, I read the next 3 volumes of No Guns Life. So that would be volume 4, which is great. I love this orange color. Volume 5, great green as well. And volume 6, sorry, volume 6. And this one actually turns into a bit more of a, like it was kind of more of a crime noir thing. And it kind of does maintain that. But it kind of finally follows a larger, more complex situation. The mechanical lady's brother turns out to have been alive the whole time, and we actually get to learn a lot about how that came to be and why this came to be, as well as learn more about Juzo and the young man that he takes care of. I can't remember his name, but it's really, really good. It's really, really enjoyable. Everything that goes on here is really, really good. I like the art style a lot. The crime noir, cyberpunk element of the story is really good. The aesthetic of it is just so fun and enjoyable. And there's nothing about it that is bad, in my opinion. Everything is good. Maybe it's not the greatest, but it is still good and enjoyable. And I like that a lot. I think it's really, really good. And I just really enjoyed it a lot. And it hasn't really gotten to the point where I can think that it's one of these sci-fi stories that really looks into the reality of humanity through looking at robots or anything like that. But it seems to be getting there, and I'm really excited to see what that does. Mostly it's focusing on the kind of cyberpunk style storylines where it's just like greed corrupts and power corrupts. And so now we have these crazy people that are corrupt as hell, and they're doing everything in order to stay in control. And that's kind of good. I mean, I have no problems with this being the plot point. I just kind of wish that it had a little bit more of that kind of Heart Year or Adam the Beginning type of story where it kind of looks at what it means to be human. Mostly it's just looking at the bad sides of humanity, right? So I really wish it kind of looked at the better ones as well. Then, Dress Up Darling Volume 4. I really like this cosplay. And this one, I think, is the one where they all finally get together to cosplay. And we get to see Maureen and Yuju cosplay together. And then the older sister as well. And continue to like this story a lot. I really don't have anything else to add to my thought process on the story. I just can't wait to pick up Volume 5. So yeah, then I read Batman Year One. That's upside down, sorry. Here you go, Batman Year One. And I had bought this before the Batman movie. I watched the Batman movie. I wanted to read this, and then I watched the Batman movie again, and I decided to finally read this, right? So it's good. I really enjoyed it. It kind of does seem similar to the Batman movie. It kind of does have a lot of elements here that are similar, but it is not exactly the same. First of all, the Batman movie is Year 2. This one is Year 1. So this is the really true very beginnings of Batman, and actually it's also the beginnings of Jim Gordon as he kind of finally gets to Gotham and he starts to realize that he's the only one that isn't crooked in this town, and that kind of affects him a lot, and also ends up with this really interesting interaction between Bruce and Jim Gordon at the end of the volume, which I thought was really, really great. I definitely see why so many people swear by this Batman story, and I definitely understand it, but it's still not the greatest Batman story ever. It is mostly just a look at the beginning of Batman, and it functions really well for that, but it is kind of a little bit outdated and kind of old school. However, it does at least thankfully not have the really shitty kind of 9-square layout of something like Watchmen. So I'm very thankful for that, because that is the worst comic book layout ever. So then I read a lot of digital manga and digital light novels. So I got into Dungeon Busters 2. I already made a review for this, so you guys can check that out. But more or less, basically my idea is that it's a good novel. I really enjoy the political aspect. There's a lot of people that say that it's a little too nationalistic, a little too patriotic towards Japan, but I counter that by saying that, yeah, it's fiction. Let them be as nationalistic as they want in real life, and in their fiction, as long as it doesn't really turn into anything bad, go for it. It doesn't really matter, right? If these fantasy stories can be about, these power fantasy guys, why can't it also be a power fantasy about your country, right? So I really had no issue with the patriotic or nationalistic lean of the manga, or the light novel. I had no issue with it. Honestly, I didn't even really notice it until after I saw someone mention it, and then I kind of paid attention to it, and I realized that it was kind of pretty hardcore on that in some elements. But again, it doesn't really matter. As long as it stays in the fiction, it's fine. It doesn't really make a difference. And it's all good, right? So yeah, then I read One Punch Man, and I read the first 15 chapters, which are supposed to be the introduction saga to One Punch Man, and I really wasn't convinced that it's good. I really like the art style. I don't really care too much about the plot line yet. However, the plot line is only just starting, so I guess that is fair. That's understandable. However, you know, there's a lot of parody elements that I really don't find enjoyable. Like, there's nothing funny about the story yet. To me, a lot of people say it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be really cool and action heavy. And so far, it has not been any of those things. So I haven't really been convinced. However, I'm mostly just reading it because I really like how Yusuke Murata draws female characters and the way he draws action. So I probably will continue to read this, but I'm in no rush to do so. Okay, sorry about the abrupt change in lighting and some positioning as well. I had to step away and I had to come back, and it's been like 7 hours since I last started recording. So anyway, back to what I was saying. One Punch Man was okay. I'm okay with it. I don't really have a strong desire to continue reading it yet, but I probably will, just in order to try to see what everyone is talking about, right? It's the same thing with Chainsaw Man. I wasn't really loving Chainsaw Man. I read the Bomb Girl arc, really loved that, and then kind of really didn't care too much about the rest of it. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be the same thing that happens here with One Punch Man. I don't think so, but so far I'm just not like super into it yet. So yeah, then I read The Faraway Paladin. This is a light novel. I read the first volume. I already did a review on it. I read it digitally. I had this on Bookwalker forever, and I decided to finally give it a read, and it was really, really good. It's kind of like Mushoku Tensei without the really shitty, like, original life of the main character. Like, our main character does have a pretty crappy life when he was a normal human, but you don't really get mentions of it, and you don't really get to see him being a shitty person. You just see him realize that he was bad, and then kind of use that as a way to push into being someone good, right? So I really like that. I thought it was really, really good. I do like the Mushoku Tensei style story where you follow a character from birth up to, you know, age 7 and then up to adulthood. I think that that's really good. I just I think that Mushoku Tensei is too tough, but I think that Faraway Paladin is quite good because it doesn't really deal with like a really, really, really shitty person that you really don't think will have like some sort of redemption, even if he can live life over again, right? However, Faraway Paladin also is a lot more dark. It's a lot more dark fantasy-esque, and I really, really like it. And the way it's written is just so, so good. I really, really liked Faraway Paladin a lot. So yeah, then I read Barrage, Volumes 1 and 2, complete series. And Barrage was the work before My Hero Academia for Kohei Horikoshi. So you get to see a lot of things that are very similar. You know, we have this kid that doesn't come from anything, that has nothing, that suddenly gains a very powerful power that actually is kind of also symbolic of a position of power as well, right? The same way that Deku is the wielder of One for All, and so is basically the prince of Japanese heroes. Our main character, Astro in Barrage, is also the prince of his country or his place because he owns this power, the ogre, right? And we also get to see this proto-Aizawa character who happens to basically be just Aizawa with red hair. And he also has a really interesting, very similar relationship that Aizawa and Deku have. You know, he originally doesn't think this kid is much, and then realizes that this kid has potential, and then that potential turns into some sort of affection, as well as like a tough, you know, like tough love type of situation where the teacher is harsh on the students, but it is all in order for the student to grow stronger. And I really like that. We also get introduced to a female character that is basically like half Ochako, half Hatsume Mei, and I really like that. I think that that character is good. She also had a really sad backstory, and I really wish that the story continued further. And honestly, all I'm really getting out of Barrage is the fact that Horikoshi needs to do a fantasy series after he finishes My Hero Academia, because My Hero Academia has fantasy elements, but it is predominantly a science fiction story, right? Because superheroes are mostly a sci-fi kind of style thing, and I really want like a proper fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons type story from Horikoshi. I think he'd do a great job. His art style would lend itself really well to all of the creatures that a fantasy story could lend, could like create him to draw, right? So I would really like to see that a lot. Then I read the One Piece saga of Fishman Island. So I think that's the 7th saga. It's the first saga after the time skip, and it was really, really good. I really liked it. I think that it had a lot going for it. However, the fact that it's right at the end of, you know, the great stuff that happened in Marineford, and, you know, it doesn't really have like 100 chapters of buildup feels kind of weak, even though it is arguably something as important as, you know, the war on a Marineford, right? So that kind of makes it tank a little bit. It's kind of the same idea as like what's it called? Like Skypiea not being as good as Alabasta, because Alabasta is like the sweeping thing that, you know, took 200 chapters to get to, and then you get into Skypiea and it's supposed to be like this liberating kind of, you know, massive thing, and it's like it doesn't hit the same way because it doesn't have 100 chapters leading up to it, right? So I kind of have that same feeling. However, in terms of like where I place this on my sagas, I would probably place it fourth, I guess, like right smack in the middle, because I think it's better than the Thriller Bark Saga. It's better than Skypiea, and I guess it's probably better than the prologue as well, than East Blue. I think it's really, really good. I just don't know where it would place above that. Like, you know, Ennis Lobby is still top, then Marineford, and then Alabasta, and then I guess Fishman Island is next, and then everything else, right? So, yeah, I think that that's probably where I would put it. It's really good. It just doesn't have like the things necessary, the huge amount of payoff necessary for it to, you know, feel like it's good. And I think that this might change if I had read it, you know, week to week, if I was slowly building up to it. But because I could read it all in one go, I didn't feel the passage of time, this like slow buildup, the same way I felt for like Marineford or Alabasta or Ennis Lobby, right? So that's just my 2 cents on that. I'm not sure if it's better or worse. I just know that it didn't really hit as hard as the other ones, right? So, yeah. Then I read Toradora, Volume 3, and honestly, I was pretty bored during the majority of the reading time for this book. However, the ending was good. It kind of saved the volume for me, and it definitely made me willing to continue to read this, even though I might not enjoy it afterwards. It's only 10 volumes, though, and if I continue to get all of these for $7, I'm more than willing to, you know, take forever to collect them if that's what it takes, right? So, yeah, Toradora Volume 3, there really isn't much to say. I didn't really love it. I really didn't enjoy that it's kind of spins its wheels a lot. Like, at this point, we know that Taiga and Ryuji are probably going to end up together, and that's kind of what happens, you know, that kind of is solidified at the end of the volume, but, you know, Taiga is still spinning her wheels a lot, and just really angry and annoying, and kind of really, like, not great as a tsundere character, even though we know that she appreciates Ryuji. She's just bad at communicating it, but bad, like, to an extreme level that she just ends up hitting him all the time, and I really don't like that. But I also don't hate her because I know what she's kind of thinking, and it just, I don't know, it's really confusing. But honestly, the whole Ami versus Taiga thing was kind of boring. I didn't really care for it. So yeah, hopefully the next volume is better, and that's all really I have to say about that one. Then the last things I read were actually 2 volumes of the same light novel series, which is Didn't I Say to Make My Abilities Average in the Next Life, volumes 2 and 3, and this one was really, really good. Compared to Toradora, this does not spin its wheels at all. This continues the plotline very quickly. We get to learn a lot about Reina in Volume 2, and we get to learn a lot about Mavis and Pauline in Volume 3. And it's like this kind of moe slice of life story with a lot of fantasy action as well, and these very cute girls doing a lot of cute things, but also being kind of badasses, and I really, really enjoy it. It's also really relaxing. Funa has this ability to make whatever they're doing, you know, which is usually very stressful, kind of harsh situations, feel very relaxing with the way they write and the way that they create their moe type characters, and it just really makes me happy to read it. It's really, really enjoyable. It's kind of slow and relaxing, but it's also tense enough to keep me engaged, and I really, really like how Funa writes. So yeah, if you guys can check out any of the Funa titles, either Abilities Average or the Potion Lolly or the 10,000 Coins, I think that one is actually not available anymore. Someone picked up the manga edition, but the light novel was supposed to be by that one company that kind of disappeared off the face of the earth, and I can't remember which one it was. It was whichever company had the chivalrous knight, or the one with the hot chick with the red hair. I can't remember her name, but or the name of the series. But you know, whatever that company was, they're gone. I'm pretty sure they disappeared and they stole a bunch of money from someone, and so that title from Funa is not available, but the other 2 are definitely available, and I would definitely recommend that you guys check out at least Abilities Average, and if not, then Potion Lolly. So yeah, and that's basically all I read. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know your thought, and thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, see you guys later.